Today's guest has been called a jack of all trades, wrestler, commentator, documentarian, and now he's working on a new project called LA Fights. Please welcome our guest, Nigel McGuinness.
Hello. How are you?
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Nigel. Did I leave anything out?
No. I suppose I'd be producer right now, wouldn't I? That's what my title would be now. Producer of LA Fights, and if I can get it funded, then probably director. Well, I'm already the writer as well. So, like you said, jack of all trades.
All right. Now, I'm really interested in this new project. I've done a lot of research on it. What is the driving force behind LA Fights? Why did you want to get this going?
A couple of reasons, really. I mean, number one, I always felt like I spent a lot of my life learning the professional wrestling industry, and I felt that, people say write about what you know. Well, that's what I know. And I felt like there was a place in the marketplace for something categorically different, a new structure in terms of the business model, but, in terms of the in-ring and the storylines as well. And on top of that, I felt like people were clamoring for something different, Every Monday night I hear people constantly talking about how they hate WWE and this certainly is not in any way positioned as competition, but I do hear and have heard for the longest time people going, why can't there be a product which is more like the sort of high concept scripted shows like Breaking Bad or Walking Dead or shows like that, or people who are fans of MMA that go, pro wrestling just doesn't speak to me necessarily on a mainstream level anymore because we kind of see through the cracks now, whereas in the early 90s, not so much. So I felt like there was a market for it. People were clamoring for a new product, a new concept, and I felt like I had the experience to turn that product into a reality. And so I spent the last 18 months of my life putting a lot of hard work into making that a reality, to where now I've combined all the individual parts of what everybody thinks will make the next evolution in pro wrestling. I got together with some producers out here, found out how much it would cost, bare bones, to make this into a reality, pull in some favors, etc., but not making everybody working for free, making sure that actually this is enough to see it to a reality. And that's what I've done. I've got a price tag on it now. I know how much this will cost to get done. And so that's where we are. That's where we are when I launched the project 2 weeks ago. Up to 25,000 now, 250 backers. And moving forward, I got to the end of the month, end of January, to get 370, which is a huge spike. There's no doubt about it. But Christmas was December. Now we've got a whole month of hopefully some paychecks and people really starting to hear more about it to where they'll get behind it.
Absolutely. Now, on the site, lafights.com, now I'll probably say it about 50 times throughout this, but just to hammer it home. Now, it says that you are setting out to reinvent the entire pro wrestling genre. That's a pretty tall order. But what are some of the things that you see that need to be changed in the professional wrestling genre?
It's not that they need to be changed. It's that there's a gap in the marketplace for them to be changed.
Okay.
If you look at WWE, they have a product which is catering to a certain demographic. You could argue whether it really caters that demographic or not. But the bottom line is they still, make millions of dollars a year. They still sell out arenas all over the world. However, there's a lot of people that no longer are watching that product that I believe would love a different product and more of a high concept product, with storylines that are more shades of grey, characters that you like but sometimes disappoint you, and characters that you hate but sometimes surprise you, much like in the real world, and with an in-ring style which is more believable, and perhaps arguably in this world of MMA being so prominent in the public sphere, you can suspend your disbelief a little bit more. But I mean, let me ask you, John, you said you looked at the website, you've heard a little bit of the pitch and stuff like that. What in your mind is sort of stopping you from investing in the project? Because for me, I've heard a lot of people talking about how they don't really see exactly what the product is. Christmas is a difficult time as well. There's a lot of other Kickstarters out there. There have been other Kickstarters that got funded and then never saw the light of day. So what I'm trying to do really is sort of understand what the concerns are with people really getting behind it. There's been a lot of people that have backed it and a lot of people that, as I'm saying now, appreciate, everybody sort of trying to push the word and get it out there. But ultimately, I've got to get people putting money behind this to make it into a reality, because that's what the sort of the steep hill ahead of me, and I need to figure out what the issue is right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that right now, like I plan, actually, as soon as we get done talking to you, I'm going to not only donate, but I'm going to put it out on our site to try to make sure that we, keep spreading the word. I really agree with the product. I think it sounds amazing. I know that there's some concerns which you've mentioned on the site about it not being funded, but there's really no risk in the sense that if it's not fully funded, then everybody gets their money back.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did the pitch when you watch it, do you kind of get it? Do you see what it is, or do you not?
No, I think that and right now with the way that I don't want to say independent wrestling as a whole, but the independent wrestling culture, whether it be podcasts like this one or Colt Cabana's Pro Wrestling Tees, where they don't have to do the same old thing, I think this fits in. It gives people a choice to still enjoy it, but it also raises the level to what you're saying, shows like Breaking Bad, Walking Dead, Modern Family. So I think that this is what the reality of the situation is throughout, the next 5 years, 10 years, that the way that professional wrestling seems to be going, or even MMA for that matter, this is what people are going to want to see. So I definitely appreciate what you're trying to do, and I really hope that this gets funded, and because I'm anxious to see what you have lined up.
Thank you, John. I really do appreciate that. It's funny because I've done a couple of other interviews. I did a very one maybe 2 or 3 days ago or something else like that. And the guy was very upfront and honest, which I really appreciated. And he's kind of felt like some people felt like, well, if this is going to become a reality, why put money in it now when I can maybe put $5 into iTunes when it goes up on there and see it then? Obviously, my counterpoint was, it will never be on iTunes if you don't put money into it now. But I think we perhaps have become spoiled in today's world to, sort of be able to just sit back and wait. And I guess to a certain extent, it goes into the whole piracy of people's products as well. Mm-hmm. I know Colt Cabana has been very outspoken about anti-piracy, as I have with my documentary as well. To where I think a lot of people still kind of feel as though, well, I'll just wait until it's up somewhere anyway, and then I'll get behind it anyway. But that, in this day and age, it really only leaves big companies, big production companies, to put stuff out there. And they are doing some great stuff, don't get me wrong. We mentioned the shows, which are fantastic. But within the pro wrestling genre, you are kind of limited in terms of what new products are being put out there right now.
Absolutely. And just to get kind of back into this, just so people may, if they're foggy on the idea, you've mentioned shows such as Breaking Bad, The Walking Dead, Modern Family. Other than these shows that you've spoken about, what kind of things have you drawn inspiration from for this project?
A lot. I mean, a lot, to be honest with you. The in-ring style, actually, I've been doing jiu-jitsu for the last year and a half, actually, John. Dragon, Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan, mm-hmm. When he was wrestling for Ring of Honor, he was doing jiu-jitsu for maybe the last 3 or 4 years that he was there, and that influenced his style. And I think if anybody watched him back in those days, he used a triangle, he used a lot of like other submissions that really started to broaden that gap between pro wrestling and MMA. I don't know what he does nowadays, but I think Punk similarly as well. And so for me, I didn't actually start doing that until I retired from pro wrestling, because for me, I was always scared of getting injured and then not being able to pro wrestle anymore and therefore not make any money. I think in hindsight, I should have really done the same thing that they did, because, I think my game would have been infinitely better had I been able to employ some knowledge of a real legitimate fighting style, But so since then, I've been doing that for the last 18 months, and I'm seeing a lot of sort of similarities in terms of, I guess to use inside terms when you talk about high spots within pro wrestling, headlock, tackle, crossover, and whatever else comes afterwards. Within jiu-jitsu, it's the same thing. You can go from a guard to an arm bar. He pulls the arm out into an omoplata. He rolls out, pins you, kick out, and it's all there. And it's a whole new avenue of an in-ring style that people really haven't pushed in that direction. Guys like Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish, again, they're starting to go in that direction. And there is, it's kind of a grey area because you have to be cautious. And when people say to me, why isn't WWE or TNA doing something like this? It's because they have a fan base that, whether you yourself like it or not, they still like it. They still tune in, they watch that show. And you may very well risk alienating that audience to go, I don't like MMA. I don't want to watch that. I want to see, pro wrestling as it is now. And again, good luck to them. Hats off to it. But my theory is that there's a huge audience out there now that is not watching WWE, because if you think in the late 90s, there were 10 million people watching Monday Night Wars. 10 million people. Now that number's down to about 3 or 4 on a good week, which means there's 6 million people who are out there that for whatever reason, maybe they just sort of grew up tired of it or whatever else, they've moved on. Maybe they're watching MMA. There's a whole new generation of people that have grown up on MMA as well that I think would be entertained and enthralled by a scripted fight entertainment show. And that's really, it is grandiose. There's no doubt about it, and I think some people may roll their eyes when I suggest sort of a complete sort of evolution of the genre. And I get that, and I understand it 100%. But I think, again, at the risk of sounding grandiose and self-aggrandizing, that perhaps Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman would have got the same comments at the very relevant times in their career, but they had the wherewithal and they had the backing to see it through, and history changed because of it.
Yeah. Now, when this project gets funded, you stated that you will actually be on the show. Could you share with us any other people who are already kind of involved with the show, or people that you would like to get involved in?
Jimmy Jacobs, I brought him on board as the script consultant because a couple of the storylines I was writing for, I didn't have any personal knowledge. As I said, they say write about what you know, and a lot of my theory behind writing storylines for this show was that storylines are already there within pro wrestling. And if you watch a lot of the documentaries that really have got a lot of traction within the mainstream sort of dynamic, the storylines are there, from whether it's Jake the Snake Roberts and his issues with drug addiction, or Mick Foley with concussions and trying to balance the dangers of the in-ring style versus family. They're already there. You don't really need to create that. But all you can do is you can write these storylines for people who have already lived it. Now, I've never lived some of those storylines, so I couldn't really write for them, whereas Jimmy has more of an experience with that. So I brought him on from that, and I think he would certainly fit a couple of the roles that he helped write for. There are other guys as well, and again, I won't name any names because at this point, until it gets funded, until we go through the casting process, you just don't know who's really going to fit the roles. There are guys that already work closer to this sort of hybrid style I'm thinking about that I would obviously spring to mind. And there are guys who I feel like can really emote. They can't, I don't believe that pro wrestlers are great actors. I'm a terrible actor. I really am. I've been out here for 3 years and I've gone for a couple of auditions, and every time I just leave laughing. What are you doing? You know what I mean? The reason why I think pro wrestlers are good is because, as the cliche goes, it's yourself turned up to 11. That was Steve Austin, that was The Rock, that was Mick Foley, yada, yada, yada. Same with Bryan Danielson, certainly the same with CM Punk. And so my theory with LA Fights is to write storylines for people that already have those storylines but can emote on camera, that really can get that emotion off because they've lived it themselves, and I think that will really endear people to the characters, because it is real. They're not going out there and pretending to have a drug addiction problem. They've probably dealt with it in the past, and therefore they can get it out there, and I think it will be cathartic. And I think it will speak to a lot of people that are dealing with that sort of stuff now in their life, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, and you recently did an AMA on Reddit, and I saw that there were some people that were asking about, whether it be homosexuality or anything like that, and you had great responses to them, and I think that's where people will be able to draw the most relation to these characters are from, drug addiction or struggling with whether it be religion or whatever. And on WWE right now, we're in the PG era, as they're calling it, and we have Adam Rose and a bunny and those sorts of things. So I think that sometimes the bigger companies kind of take for granted their fan base. There is a huge, and I think independent wrestling really mirrors this, that there's a huge group of people that want to be challenged and want to see these types of situations unfold. And once again, that's why I am a huge supporter, and I hope that this gets done.
I do too, and I thank you. And really, the question now becomes, in the next 4 weeks until the end of January, when the funding thing comes out, how many people who are in that group that really think pro wrestling can be that are going to get behind this project? Because that's the reality of what we're facing, that we really need to get as many people. And I think there are fans of pro wrestling that have a bit of money behind them as well. That's my theory, at least. Mm-hmm. Certainly out here in Los Angeles or in any other form of the entertainment business. I think if they hear about this and they really get it, they maybe get behind it too as well. And that's my goal with this, is that I could have sat back on this and I could have tried to go the traditional route, which I did look into to a certain extent, but no one really wants to touch pro wrestling right now. And again, I could have tried to pitch it as MMA, which, it could fit within that genre as well. Mm-hmm. Really, it's all how you see it. But at the end of the day, I wanted to start off and have carte blanche. I wanted to know that if I get this funded through Kickstarter, I can do what I want. I can make this into a reality exactly how I feel like this should go. And if people are backers as well, I mean, everything from the logo, people have expressed. I mean, I made that logo myself, mm-hmm. and I'm not the best graphic design artist, as anybody knows, you know what I mean? So once this gets funded, I'm going to reach out to people and say, maybe we'll do a competition about designing. I've already had a couple of people, design some things that look fantastic. There's a great guy, Harley, who does some video stuff, who's done a trailer I just tweeted about as well. So it really is going to be a project that everybody's going to be involved in. Now, obviously, I'm going to have the final say so because it's my project, but I'm certainly going to reach out for people's opinions. And part of the rewards, for $20 or more, you get to see these video blogs. So however so often, I'll film some of the stuff that's going on. You'll see behind the scenes the casting process, the shooting process, the editing process. And people arguably don't ever really get to see how things work behind the scenes. And I think so, as well as just the education, as long as just the actual finished product, you'll also get an education into what goes into making it, and perhaps then be a little bit more knowledgeable about how difficult it is to make a finished product. Because, and again, as I said, I'm not considering this competition, but I do know from my experience with TNA that to go out for a company like that and produce something categorically different is not easy, because you have so many people working in the creative process that you may have a great idea, but by the time it goes to this guy and this guy and this guy and back to you and then back to the TV channel, now it's no longer what it originally was supposed to be. And that's the beauty of this project, is it can be exactly what we want it to be.
Now, it's no secret that you've been an advocate for safer conditions in the world of professional wrestling. Even though your show would be scripted, as you said, would you feel conflicted if you had to add blood to heighten the drama in a certain episode, or do you feel that since it's not really the real pro wrestling, if you will, that you wouldn't have a problem with that?
No, I mean, I'm still, I will always be anti-blood. I don't believe there's any place for blood, intentional blood loss mm-hmm. within pro wrestling, mm-hmm. Because I think the cat's out of the bag now. It doesn't fool anybody. Now, when it happens by accident, then, perhaps it can add something to it.
Yeah.
But my goal within going through this is obviously I have to sort of stand behind my beliefs, and therefore everybody that comes on board will have to be tested beforehand in case they bleed on the show by accident. Mm-hmm. I'm obviously not going to expect them to pay for that themselves. That's why, it is a limited budget. Yeah. I need to make sure that everybody is safe, but at the same time, there's not going to be money for flying people in from all over the country or even all over the world. This is a project that people are going to be involved in. I'm not going to ask them to do it for free, but at the same time, they're not going to get rich off it. And I would like to think that they believe in this project as much as I do. They won't be doing it for free, but let's imagine. Let's say that this does get over as much as we dream, mm-hmm. and it really does create, if you will, an entire new genre within the scripted fight entertainment, for want of a better phrase. Imagine if you were on that show. Imagine if you were one of the first guys to be seen on that show that has literally millions upon millions of people watch it. I mean, that's more value than any amount of money that I can pay you. And that's the reality. That's why the money for these 6 episodes is really bare bones. It's not a lot of money in terms of shooting 6 episodes for a TV show. If someone said to me, what's the ideal amount, I'd ask for probably 6 times as much as this.
Yeah.
But I know I'm never going to get close to that on Kickstarter. I said to my producer friend who budgets these sort of things all the time, I said, look, give me the bare bones, the absolute minimum I can ask for, or excuse me, the maximum I can ask for to actually guarantee this will see the light of day. And that's what it was. It was $370, including the Kickstarter cut and taxes, and obviously paying for all the rewards as well.
Now, since this is more of a episodic TV show and not a wrestling promotion, so to say, is it difficult to come up with characters that not only have to be loved by pro wrestling fans, but anybody who's turning on this show that may have never been a fan of pro wrestling?
Yeah, it's really tough. It's actually, John, I've written a couple of screenplays in the past, and part of the process, I don't know if you're or anybody's familiar listening, is they say that a lot of times if you write characters for shows, they come across very paper thin. There's not a lot of depth to them because you have an idea for a person, but you don't really know who that person is. You know, maybe you take a couple of character traits from people you know, but it's not a real person you're writing for. So what I've done with every one of the characters, certainly the main characters, is at the beginning of me and Ginny Jacobs together, I would write 3 to 4 pages of this person's backstory, stuff that you'll never see in the finished product.
Yep.
You know, who they were as a kid, who their friends were, what TV shows they watched, what their favorite color, stuff that you'll never use. But then when you finally start writing and putting words into these people's mouth, now it comes across as more realistic and more genuine because you're actually writing for a fully fledged human being as opposed to a caricature, you know. So that was a lot of the 18 months that I put into this, was doing the background to these characters, and then trying to put these different characters together and saying, how would they interact? Where would they conflict? And how can I raise the stakes within those conflicts to play out within this genre to where they have to fight each other every week?
Now, you mentioned that the what you're trying to raise money for is basically 6 episodes. If this gets funded, when this gets funded, and these 6 are a success, would you be open to having like extra seasons, or how would that work?
Yeah, I mean, the whole script actually is designed for a second season, and much like life imitating art, the goal is to get as many eyeballs on this as possible, again, within whatever limitations there are on how I get it funded. I mean, as I said before, the beauty of Kickstarter is I can do what I want with it, you know, and if I can put it out there so as many people can see it as possible, I can do that. Now, if I get this money from an independent investor, they're not going to want to give this away for free or even for a limited amount of money. They're going to want to get their return plus as much as possible, which means it can sit on the floor. What I'm trying to do here is I'm not trying to get rich. If I was, I'd ask for more money and I'd try and go a different route. I want to get this product out because I believe in it that much, and I know that it can influence the industry to where there'll be more places for the guys to work. The companies that are in existence, I think, can take little bits from it and do it within their own model, because I couldn't take a 52-week-a-year show and write these sort of storylines for them. It's impossible. You have to have a beginning and a middle and end, much like a TV series for Breaking Bad or anything else, you know. So that's why I'm doing this. I really believe in it that much, and that's why I'm not asking for that much money out of it. But in doing so, as I said, writing the script, the idea is that it's a small independent fight club in Los Angeles, and they're struggling to exist, and they get a chance to be with a major TV channel. And therefore, if they do get with that major TV channel, it'll change everything. I mean, obviously, they'll be guaranteed to be in existence still, but the guys who were on board from the beginning, maybe they won't still have a job, you know. And it's much the same as, you know, guys who are going to be on this first show. If it was to get picked up by, you know, like a channel like Netflix or whoever who wants this new product, this new sort of content, maybe they wouldn't want that. Maybe they'd want, you know, MMA stars who are already like big names. Who knows? All I know is that I believe this product can really reinvigorate the industry and show what is possible.
Now, you're a seasoned vet on the Kickstarter scene. LA Fights is coming hot off the heels of your last Kickstarter-funded venture, The Last of McGinnis. Um, how has your life changed since doing that documentary?
Just, I don't know if I can even find the words. I remember I did one of the first interviews I did actually mentioned that, and it really suddenly really occurred to me what a profound effect that documentary had on my life. And again, to speak about the value that Kickstarter had, if it wasn't for the people backing that Kickstarter campaign, the documentary never would have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was at that stage in my life. I'd had my retirement tour. I was a little unsure about my future. I mean, I spent my life dressing up in spandex, pretending to beat people up. It's not a lot of you can't go to a job. I tried to get a job in Trader Joe's which is like a grocery store out here, and they wouldn't hire me. You've got to understand that if you spend your whole life trying to be a pro wrestler and it doesn't work out, you're kind of limited in what you can do. And thanks to everybody supporting the documentary, that brought me out to Los Angeles, that taught me how to be an editor, that got me my editing job now, and that essentially changed my life forever to where now I feel like I'm okay and I'll be all right and I'll get on all right. And there are very few people, or rather, it has become very often the case that people in pro wrestling have difficulty moving on after they've been in pro wrestling,
Mm-hmm.
And so I will always be grateful for that. I'm now out here in Los Angeles. I love living out here. I've got a job that pays the bills, which, again, in Los Angeles is not the easiest thing to do. And really, it did all come back to the whole fact that people believed in me and believed in the project with the Kickstarter campaign, the documentary. So Lord only knows, as I said, if this gets funded and this becomes a reality, just imagine the sort of effect it could have on my life, And I think if we watch the documentary, again, that wasn't necessarily about me making money or anything at all. It was really about me coming to terms with the end of my career. And a lot of people have come to me and said that it really sort of influenced them and really spoke to them with issues that they'd dealt with themselves, dealing with depression, dealing with feeling that they perhaps hadn't achieved what they wanted in their life. And that in and of itself, again, I kind of used that in terms of writing LA Fights because I felt like I want this to not only reinvigorate the industry, but I want it to be a positive thing that people can watch and go, great, I get it. You know what I mean? Like other people deal with the same sort of things that I deal with. And I think that's the beauty of art, is that it can connect human beings in that way.
Absolutely. I think the reason I wanted to bring up the whole Kickstarter thing is that you have a proven track record. I know that a lot of people have some concerns about other... I'm not familiar with the other pro wrestling documentary styles that have been tried to be funded on Kickstarter that haven't come to fruition, but obviously yours did. It was a very huge success. So if that is something that's holding you back, or anybody who's listening, please don't let that go. His record speaks for itself here. So,
lightning round.
Crowning moment of your professional wrestling career.
I'd like to say the match with Kurt Angle in TNA, the very first one. And that's certainly not to impute any of the other matches that I had that were amazing and really, set me on stage. But I think for me, that in terms of the mainstream genre, to go out there and have that sort of quality match with a guy like that, to me, I'd have to put that up there, yeah.
Okay, now, I don't know if everybody knows this, but you right now edit on the Carbonaro Effect, which is on True TV. It's an amazing show. I highly recommend it. If anybody has not seen it, it's hilarious. With that being said, you also do some magic on the side. Who, out of all time, who is your favorite magician?
Darren Brown, although I'm not sure he'd like to be called a magician. He's actually, I think, more likes to be referred to as a mentalist. I think when you hear magician, you think, oh, look, a rabbit comes out of the hat, and,
yes.
That sort of stuff. Whereas mentalism, it's a little bit more cerebral. So he always blew me away from the first time I saw him. And not only that, again, to speak about the documentary or my LA Fights project, I think he genuinely is a nice person who wants to try and influence the world for a better sort of way, And I think he's very smart and very inspiring in that regard. Certainly someone I look up to.
Okay. Now, you're working on a television show, so we have to ask, what is your current favorite television show?
Man, I actually don't watch TV. I watch Netflix. I
Okay.
mean, and I think again, I think that's part of my theory is that we get content in different ways now than even 5 years ago. I know a lot of people don't have cable at all, and they just watch Hulu or Netflix or whatever else. I'm currently watching. It's going to sound depressing. I'm currently watching a documentary about letters or diaries that people wrote in the First World War.
Wow.
I was a big mark for the Second World War.
Uh-huh.
I remember always sort of like knowing that my grandfather and both my grandparents were in the Second World War and kind of feeling an affiliation with it. But I never really understood that much about the First World War. So I'm learning a little bit more about it now and how that came into being and everything else. So it's really interesting. Do you know how it started, the First World War?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just watching it right now, and it was the heir to the throne of Austria got assassinated, and they linked it to someone from Serbia, so they declared war on Serbia, and then Austria called in Germany to be their allies, and then Germany decided to start a war with France so they could go, and it just went from there, and then everybody sort of bundled in, and before you know it, the world was at war, and however many millions of people died. It's crazy.
It's the domino effect, I guess.
I guess so.
Okay, so you're currently living in California, so what is your favorite part of living in California?
I'd say the weather, really. I mean, here we are in December, and it is cold. It's a little bit cold at the moment, but during the day, the sun's out, and you can walk around in t-shirt and shorts perfectly comfortable. I mean, here I am today. I drove a friend down to San Diego, and there were snow-capped mountains. At the same time, we could have gone the opposite direction, gone to the beach and gone surfing. Christmas morning, I was going surfing. It's like the lifestyle out here is just fantastic. I don't know why, but everybody doesn't live out here, other than the fact that it's so expensive.
Yeah.
I get it from that, but I mean, I just love the lifestyle out here, and everybody is in the entertainment industry or is doing creative things as well. I just think really that's very inspiring for me.
This may have been answered just then, but your favorite non-wrestling related activity?
Is this a PG-13 show or not?
Whatever you want.
I am a man after all.
Yes.
So aside from that, I would say right now hanging out in coffee shops.
Okay.
Really. Yeah, I really do love just sort of sitting there and people watching and being able to write and read and be creative. Yeah.
All right. And last but not least, obviously, if anybody knows you, they know that you were highly inspired by the Ultimate Warrior. What is your favorite Ultimate Warrior moment?
Great question. Good question. There's a few. I'm going to name a few.
Okay.
I remember being in England watching WrestleMania 8.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the main event, Sid Justice and Hulk Hogan. And I remember sort of like starting to fall asleep. And it was late at night, but it was kind of dull anyway, as those matches often were at the time. And hearing the Ultimate Warrior's music and being so excited and like literally jumping out of bed and like pounding my fist in the air because it was him. I mean, that was probably as excited as I can remember being as a child, just hearing his music. And then I think his match with Macho Man, where he took like the 5 elbows off the top and then kicked out. I mean, that was just an amazing time in pro wrestling. I remember the match with him and Hogan, right? I mean, it really was. Those matches were almost bigger than wrestling, at least they were to me. But perhaps that's because I was a kid at the time, you know what I mean? And I think perhaps for those of us that watched then and maybe grew out of it or lost our love with it for whatever reason, we forget what it was like to be a kid. And I think there are probably kids now that watch WWE and see the matches on the pay-per-views and have that same sort of feeling, you know what I mean? So I think it's important not to be cynical and understand that there's a product for everybody.
Lightning round.
Well, we definitely are huge fans of yours. We are hoping nothing but the best for you. I know that I mentioned it, lafights.com. Any other ways that people can get in contact with you or help with this project?
Yeah, NigelWrestling.com is my website. I'm on Twitter @McGuinness Nigel. Instagram at McGuinness Nigel. On Facebook as well. There's like 6 or 7 of me. I'm the one that ends on 7.
Okay.
I should really do something about that. But really, LA Fights is the way to contact me. You can send me a message on there. I said before in a couple of videos that I've done, I'm being completely open and transparent about this. And I totally understand the concerns that anybody has. If you're interested in any way, shape, or form, and there are things that are stopping you from backing, send me a message. Other people have done that, and they've asked questions about what the finished product is. I get it. I understand, like this is a difficult time of year to put money into something, and you want to be rest assured that you're going to see something for your investment. And so any issues you have, literally, I will reply to every single person that writes me. I've written 600 individual emails over the last 3 or 4 weeks, 2 weeks since the project's been launched, from everybody that backed the Kickstarter project first of all. I've got 400 more to do. And I will continue to do that because this is it for me. I believe in the project that much. And like sometimes people think you just put a project out there and people either listen, take it or they don't. But it's a job. I mean, every day I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm telling as many people as I can, I'm answering, I'm emailing people because it's that important to me. I believe in the project that much. And I think by showing that, hopefully other people will too. So, I appreciate you, John, taking the time to having me on here. And you're obviously, an intelligent person who knows his fair bit about pro wrestling. So it's nice to see, it really is nice to see that there are people that are educated about the industry. So thank you.
No problem. I think that something that people should think about as well is in this day and age, I think everybody likes to say, oh, I like that band before they were cool, or I like that team before they were good. Imagine how you can tell your friends that you were backing LA Fights before it was cool.
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
Yeah, wonderful.
Well, we thank you for being on the show. Anytime you want to come back, please let us know. And LAFights.com. And please go out. I'm going to right now as we speak. Donate, and you guys do as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much, John. I appreciate your time, mate.